My childhood sucked, and I absolutely hated it. If you had to ask me what I would rate my childhood on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it no more than a 4. There are just way too many reasons to list, so I don't even know how long this video is going to be. I'm probably just not going to be in the mood to get into it all. But one of my main reasons as to why my childhood sucked: freedom, or a lack of freedom. You cannot do anything as a kid. You have no power. You don't have the right to make decisions on your own. You're basically forced to go into school every single day for 7 hours a day. And you do that until you're 18, but that's not even just the main point here. You basically have no freedom in any way, shape, or form. You're always being told what to do, which, by the way, is actually the same case as when you're an adult, but it's way worse when you're a kid. And it's especially bad when you're like an older kid, like when you're 16, 17, where you're self-aware enough, but yet you're not old enough to make your own decisions. And also your parents can still tell you what to do, you can still be grounded by your parents, and it's just miserable. It's even worse when your parents are the type that are like very overprotective, to the point where you really can't do much. And in my case, it was pretty much just that. And one other thing that really sucked about my childhood was where I lived. So I spent a good chunk of my childhood in a really small town in the Midwest. I couldn't really do much with my life because in this small town, the nearest city was like 20 minutes away, but I could never really go out there and, do anything because it was just so damn far for a kid. You really couldn't get anywhere without a car. And it sucks even more when you're a kid because you're not even old enough to drive on your own. Where I lived, you couldn't drive on your own until you were 16. So yeah, to me, my childhood kind of felt like a prison. Every day it was just wake up, be told what to do for about 16, 18 hours, go back to sleep, and then rinse and repeat. I basically wasn't capable of doing anything, and having, very toxic parents as well, it made it a lot worse, to be honest. If I at least had parents that let me do stuff more, and weren't as overprotective and annoying, I definitely could see my childhood being a bit more fun, but that wasn't the case for me. Now here comes my next reason: school. I made a whole video about this topic a while back. I'd say back in like August of 2024. I talked about school and how it was basically traumatic to me. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, dude, what are you talking about? School is where you make friends, man. School is where your experiences happen. People really like to overrate school, mainly high school in particular. And that is not the case for me at all. High school, middle school, elementary school, all of it was miserable. Now, for my personal experience, I just did not fit in. Even with the people that were more casual, the people that weren't really popular, I'd even go as far as to say the unpopular people, even when I tried to talk to them, it just never really worked out. I think that some people just aren't meant to be friends with most people, if that makes sense. Basically, I'm trying to say that some people just operate on such a different wavelength from others, whether it be because they're autistic, whether it be because they're neurodivergent, or whether they're just unique and everyone else is just sheep. I don't know, but I'm just kidding. It doesn't matter what the reason is, but some people just aren't meant to fit in with most people. Like, I think the reason why I didn't really make any close friends in school, it's because the way everyone was, everyone's personality, it just didn't mesh with me. It could just be because, people in my generation are, weird. Either way, I just didn't really mesh with these people, and this made me hate school even more. Not only are we wasting our time learning about useless things, but school forces us to be in environments that we're not all going to be comfortable in. And they're just like, alright, you're going to be here for the next 15 years. I hope you make friends. It's so dumb. And that's kind of why I wish I was just homeschooled. Because being forced to be in a place with a bunch of people I don't like, That was a terrible experience. One of the worst ideas humanity came up with is making it so that we all have to do things we don't like most of our lives, just because that's the thing to do if you want to live. And school is the perfect embodiment of this ridiculous idea. That's why so many kids cheat. That's why so many kids don't take it seriously. Because we're all just brought into it and told, you have to do this. So of course there's going to be some rebellious people, because they're being told to do something that they don't want to do. To be controlled and to be told what to do, it makes us feel a type of way, a negative type of way. And again, this carries on until adulthood, which I'm going to talk about in another video. The only other thing I hated as much as school was just coming home to a toxic household, which I'm not going to get into too much, but I'm going to be real with you. If you have any sort of ethnic parents, basically if your parents are not white, your parents probably were raised to not really understand mental health, so chances are your parents are going to be more toxic. And that's kind of what happened with me. And if your parents are religious parents, it's even worse. And religion, I've already spoke about religion before, but religion really did a number on me. I wasted so much of my childhood studying religion, being forced to study religion, because obviously my family was religious, but I had no other choice. It was either listen to them or get beaten. So obviously I had to study something that I obviously didn't really care about. In my case, the bad thing about becoming an adult was learning about how horrific life really is. Learning about how unfair it is, how corrupt it is. And when I was a kid, I didn't really think of these things when I was a kid. The only good thing about being a kid was that you weren't really thinking too deep. Everything was relatively simplistic, and the only thing you really cared about was watching the next episode of Naruto or Dragon Ball or something like that. And I do appreciate that. But when it comes to freedom, I think that being ignorant and having no freedom, aka being a kid, is way worse than being an adult that's, self-aware. An adult that sees the truth. There's just nothing worse than constantly being told what to do, not having any money, and that's a big thing. Your options of making money as a teenager, as a kid, it's very minimal compared to when you're an adult. Just look at these job postings. One of the first questions they ask is, are you 18? If you're not 18, you're not going to get hired. So this leaves you with only being able to work retail, and not even all retail companies either, just the few that hire teenagers. And you can work fast food, and that's about it. You're always broke. And when people talk about, oh, what about the memories, man? What about the fun with friends? Yeah, and let me tell you this. For most of us, most of those friends we talked to in high school, or just all of them really, we don't really talk to them anymore. High school to me was only 6 years ago. I finished high school in 2019, right before the whole, 2020 thing. And it feels like a completely different era. Like I hardly even recognize myself from back then. To me, it's such an irrelevant time of my life. I just see it as that time where I had no freedom, that time where I was broke, that time where I was living in a toxic household, that time where I couldn't really do anything because I didn't have a car and I was not old enough to drive. And, the closest thing was an hour away. That's what I view the high school era as, for me. I don't view it as a fun time of my life. I view it as a miserable time. And another thing I do appreciate back then is I was able to enjoy things like video games and anime and just hobbies in general. Back then, it was a lot easier. Back then, I would just play a game for 10 hours a day without a care in the world. I can't do that anymore. I don't really care that much about video games right now. Don't get me wrong, I still like them, but I don't really have the patience for video games anymore. Now that life has just become about chasing money and hustling, it's pretty much impossible for me to just sit there for 8 hours a day playing video games. I'm gonna be feeling like, damn, I should have been making money, I should have been doing something productive, I should have been hitting the gym, I should have been getting some exercise. Because listen man, I'm almost 24, and obviously I'm not old, but I'm just getting to that point in life where I just need money. I need to move on, I need to do something with my life. And with video games, I'm not going to say it's a waste of time, but what I am saying is that the pressure of being productive alone has made video games a lot less fun. Now, this pressure wasn't here as a teenager. You're obviously not at the stage where you need to be thinking about money or bills and any of that, so you can fully be immersed in your hobby. But now as an adult, I play a video game or watch an anime, and I'm like, damn, shouldn't I be doing something else? Shouldn't I be hustling, And I don't even like thinking this way, but it's just something that happens a lot to me. And I will say this, that is a very good thing about childhood, but once again, the lack of freedom really diminishes everything good about your childhood. Now as an adult, I can go out and do whatever I want. If I want to, damn, I could even drive to Canada if I wanted to. That's how much freedom I have right now, and I don't even make that much money. I'm not even saying that I enjoy life, I'm not saying that, because if you know me, you know my opinion about life. I'm not saying that being an adult means you're completely free, because obviously you're not. You're still going to be enslaved by a company because you have to work. And yes, even though you see how terrible this world is and you see this whole working thing as just stupid, and you realize that, damn, I have to do this for 40 years, even then though, it's still better. I feel like when people romanticize childhood, it's mainly about entertainment. Like, things they watched, video games they played. Like, of course, we all watched, Dragon Ball Z as a kid. Maybe some of you played old school video games, maybe like the PS1, PS2, GameCube. I was a GameCube guy. Nintendo Wii, PlayStation 3, stuff like that. We all have nostalgia for these things that we used to play, these hobbies that we used to have. And when we think about our childhood, those are the first things that come to mind. But I'm not going to sit here and talk about I miss my childhood and talk about how it was such a magical time. No, it sucked. Being a kid is all about being bossed around, being broke, being told what to do, going to school, going to a place you hate for 7 hours, get judged by other people, potentially even bullied in some cases, and of course not having the ability to make decisions. That's what it means to be a child. Now that's all I gotta say for today's video. And yeah, take care.